Right now, many of us live in a moment where, with the touch of a screen, we can outsource any number of daily tasks from cooking to shopping to thinking, all in the name of convenience. As we prioritize excising these seemingly erroneous tasks from our daily routines, because they're boring, because we're busy, because society or tech companies have convinced us that they're getting in the way of us living our lives. We are also alienating ourselves from the astrological house of ritual, the sixth house. Our chores, our walks with our dogs, our errands, our morning and evening rituals, our movement routines, our chats with our coworkers, these things are not in the way of us living our lives. They are our lives. They are the tiny factors that make up being alive. The prevalence of this consumer based, tech assisted convenience culture in its broadest, deepest, and most simplistic forms is threatening the sanctity of the sixth house and the agency that we have to arrange the little pieces of our lives into the big picture. And it's doing all of this in like a parasitic body snatchers kind of way. Before we go any further, can we call it techno convenience culture? Because even though that's a little bit reductive, it's convenient for the sake of the video. I live in California, and while I know that this culture isn't just local, I can't say for sure how prevalent it is worldwide or even in the United States. So instead of locating it geographically, I'll locate it in this moment of techno fascist late stage capitalism. This version of convenience culture recognizes that we are all, collectively speaking, drained of our labor, drained of our vitality, drained of our sense of meaning. And so it asks us to spend a little extra to remove some of the mundanity from our lives, promising us the ever elusive and valuable time in return. Time to be productive, time to feel rested, time to connect with others, time to just live our lives. But in truth, we are simply trading away the small pieces of life that we have access to regularly. We can find apps to replace running errands, asking for small favors, and catching up with each other. But at a point, we're outsourcing the productivity, the rest, and the connection along with the task that we saw as mundane. This culture has us searching for a more optimized and convenient way to do everything, even though we only feel like we need this level of extreme convenience because we spend all of our time working and consuming. Although specific apps and tools pose particular threats to different facets of the sixth house, the real threat lies in the general pervasiveness. If only it were simply one thing. This exploitation operates as a full scale and multi pronged attack because the idea of convenience is as pervasive as the themes of the sixth house. So, with every modern problem that you experience, there is a tech billionaire that you can make richer, a deeper sense of isolation you can achieve, and agency you can relinquish by downloading the app that claims to hold the solution. Don't get me wrong here. I completely understand and participate in outsourcing tasks that fall under the umbrella of the sixth house. That's probably why it concerns me so much, actually. I have had to actively cut myself off from food delivery apps. I probably have a streaming subscription that I've completely forgotten about. And I avoid AI in part because I want to stay on my very real and deserved high horse, but also because if I started, I don't know if I would stop. Sometimes it feels like I'm constantly teetering on the edge of alienating myself entirely from the individual and daily acts of just being alive. And I think there are more of us in this position than I want to believe when I'm shaming myself into doing better. I want to take a moment to make a distinction between convenience and accommodation, because this is about a dominant culture of convenience. If we had a dominant culture of accommodation, I don't really think that much of this would be a real concern right now. Convenience is about efficiency and ease. Accommodation is about inclusion and accessibility and equity. Developments in accessibility often lead to advancements in commercial convenience, and I think there is overlap between the two, but I feel like we can still distinguish responsibly, particularly because convenience often comes as a byproduct of movements pushing for greater accommodation. Then commercial viability takes the spotlight and excludes and overshadows the people who did all of the work. While there may be an argument to be made for convenience as a form of accommodation under exploitative capitalism, I think at very best that is a symptom being offered as a temporary solution. The sixth house is one of four unaspected houses in the chart: the second house, the sixth house, the eighth house, and the 12th house. These are hidden and peripheral spaces operating under the cover of darkness within the birth chart. They are by nature obscured because they don't form a traditional aspect to the first house and therefore aren't lit up by the light of the horizon. Because of this lack of aspect, it can be easier in many ways to devalue and look away from the themes and topics of the sixth house as they present in our lives. Exploitation thrives where the spotlight of accountability cannot reach. In many ways, the concepts that birthed convenience culture are sixth house concepts, like service, efficiency, accessibility, workflow, and the necessity of mundane tasks. But convenience, to the degree that we are able to experience it today, flies in the face of these sixth house concepts. It's easy to reduce the sixth house to work, and work that we don't feel appreciated for at that. And there's truth to this. But the sixth house contains daily duties, routines, and habits of all kinds. But work is also a big part of the daily lives of most human beings, making it a near universally relatable activity. The sixth house encompasses our work ethic, our chores, our health maintenance, our hygiene, our exercise, and the ways that we take care of our pets. Thinking about the sixth house as laborious is part of why we're so willing to alienate ourselves from it in some ways. But losing touch with the sixth house elements of our lives can be a much bigger loss than we might imagine when we're just asking ChatGPT a question or door dashing dinner. And at the end of it all, someone is still laboring over this task, even if it's not you, rooting each aspect of what props up convenience culture to the sixth house. Repeatedly outsourcing mundane tasks severs our awareness and appreciation of the magic of ritual. Like alchemy, the pieces of ourselves being processed in the sixth house become so much more, both with compounding impacts over time, but also through the sixth house's relationship with the other parts of our lives. Rituals are the building blocks that stack together to make us. And the sixth house of process shows us how we can impact that building and how the tweaks and adjustments that we make can ensure that our lives fit us better every day. When we're alienated from this house, we lose access to this magic, this tailoring, this alchemy. If we detach from our mundane realities, we threaten the efficacy of our wellness routines and our preventative health practices. Engaging with the sixth house in good faith and regularly tending to these parts of our lives, even if they're less glamorous, is how we build ourselves. We atrophy the muscle of reaching out for advice, for small favors, for professional help. We lose out on the peace of mind and the patience that we can cultivate by peeling the garlic and doing the research ourselves. Mars, the planet of activity, momentum, assertion, and vitality, has its joy in the sixth house because the sixth house gives Mars space to do things. We can distance ourselves from Martian concepts like agency as an extension of limiting engagement with sixth house topics. Mars works hard, and while Mars definitely appreciates the kind of hard work that garners attention and accolades and recognition, Mars also values the labor that makes things happen every single day, even when that garners less acclaim. Mars provides the energy and the motivation to construct something with those sixth house building blocks. Mars also provides the burst of agitation that knocks them down when the structure isn't cooperating with our vision or our ego. Like all of the astrological houses, the sixth house is inextricably, demonstrably, and profoundly related to the other houses. So even if the mundanity of the sixth house feels expendable in some ways, alienation from it interrupts our relationship with the other houses and their house topics as well. The sixth house is where fifth house topics go to percolate, to routinize, to normalize. The sixth house allows for the creative processing that happens when taking a shower, chopping vegetables, or driving to work. It's where hobbies become a part of your daily life through ritualized time. It's how one spontaneous pickup basketball game with friends becomes a part of your regular movement routine. The sixth house also bridges the fifth house of romance with the seventh house of committed partnerships. The joy of dating, when invited into the mundanity of daily life, can become partnership because, in many ways, partnership is just romance that you've committed to tend to daily. And outside of just romantic relationships, the rituals of the sixth house orient us toward partnership more generally as well. Through intentional and meaningful sixth house engagement, coworkers can become business partners. The people you see at the farmer's market can become friends. And people who give good personal and professional advice can become confidants and consultants. The sixth house, like all Caden houses, also serves as a bridge between its nearest angular houses, the fourth house and the seventh house. The sixth house can show us how we get out of our homes and engage with others when we're taking care of our daily rituals and basic needs. The sixth house can show us how our mundane lives, our errands, our routines help pull us out of our homes and into engagement with others. The sixth house helps to carry us from the anchor of the birth chart over the horizon and into the light of the exterior world. And in the same way that our routines can help lead us toward committed relationships, they can also help us become full participants of the worlds outside of our homes. The mundane nature of the sixth house also supports the management of the eighth house. Ritual and regular tending are underlying requirements for many of the topics that exist within the house of shared resources. They are as important for tracking gifts, debts, taxes, inheritances, as they are for maintaining caretaking dynamics, as they are for participating in occult practices. The sixth house is also a key piece of the supportive flow running between the materially oriented houses. The grand trine between the second house, the sixth house, and the 10th house. The second house shows us how we can support and resource ourselves, how we meet our basic needs. The sixth house shows us how tending to the building blocks of our lives helps us meet those needs. The 10th house shows us how over time, what we do becomes what we do, what we've built, how we've impacted the world, and the legacy that we leave behind. It's the ritual that allows us to continuously meet those needs that arise in the second house. And it's the ritual that builds the reputation in the 10th house. When we choose to outsource these processes, we lose a piece of that symbiosis, not to mention the precious sixth house resources traded away to keep up with the cost of convenience. The sixth house is also an integral piece of the grand cross formed by the cadent houses: the third house, the sixth house, the ninth house, and the 12th house. The sixth house challenges us to grow through its squares with the third house and the ninth house. The processes of the sixth house help take us from the immediacy and the parochial nature of the third house to the growth that makes us more comfortable expanding beyond what we know and exploring what's beyond our scope of view in the ninth house. Ritual takes us from student to teacher, from journaling to publishing, and from what we gather about the world as we know it to the beliefs that construct the worldview that we hold, even in the face of the unknown. But if we reach for convenience before ritual, then AI intercepts before we get the chance to learn and understand something new. We spend hours streaming something rather than hanging out with someone we love. And we search a delivery app for our missing ingredient rather than asking a neighbor for some help. If we believe that everything can be brought to our fingertips, will we still go out and explore? Finally, the sixth house spreads its impact through its opposition with the last of the Caden houses, the 12th house. The sixth house gives us some more material ways to parse through and make sense of what's swirling around in the 12th house's shadows, institutions, and subconscious. Moving through the routines of the sixth house can help us to work through some of what can overwhelm the 12th house. If we outsource as much of the sixth house as we can, we become more disconnected from ourselves and also from society at large in some ways. Because alienation is actually a 12th house concept. The house of isolation, self undoing, and marginalization obscures. That's the 12th house's specialty. And hidden away in the 12th house is the reality that this particular culture of outsourcing, this particular culture of convenience, is much more confining than it is freeing. It separates us from the workings and the processes of being alive, in the hopes that instead we'll settle for an existence tied to the very institutions that seek to control us while they barter with our data and our money. When we continuously opt out of small tasks and errands in order to outsource them, it can feel like we're simply paying for something of value. It can feel easy and tempting to downplay the significance and the influence of these small mundane moments and the spaces that they occupy in our lives. But alienation from the sixth house is costly, and we lose so much more in the exchange than just the money.